Hello, I am JoLaine Minor. Welcome to Part 3 of the Community Development Block Grants Compliance Presentations. This is Construction Management. We will be covering the processes for bid letting through the Notice to Proceed and the maintenance of your CDBG construction contract files. Please take a moment to download the following documents from DCEO's website. These documents will be referenced in this training, and it is a good idea if you have them in front of you to follow along. Just hit pause, and I will be here when you return. Thank you. All CDBG construction projects must be competitively bid using the sealed bid process. CDBG grant administrators should ensure that the engineer is aware of all CDBG requirements and has all necessary bid documents and certifications in advance. Final bid documents should be reviewed by the CDBG grant administrator to ensure that all applicable CDBG terms and conditions have been incorporated. Advertise a minimum of 30 days prior to bid opening. Retain copies of the bid advertisement and publisher certification in the file. Request prevailing wage rates from the Labor Standards Officer, a minimum of 5 days prior to bid advertisement and 10 days prior to bid opening. See Compliance Part 1 Labor Standards presentation for more information. Post the MBE notice and send to PTAC Centers and Daryl Thomas at illinois.gov. Send confirmation of the posting and issuing to the PTAC Centers and Daryl Thomas to your grant manager and maintain a copy in the grant file. Make sure that you are addressing and completing your Section 3 efforts for the grantee. See Compliance Part 2 for Section 3 requirements and maintain these efforts in the file for your safe harbor reporting. Make sure that you are completing the Section 3 efforts for the contractor in seeking subcontracting opportunities by Section 3 business concerns. Again, see Compliance Part 2 for the Section 3 requirements, and you must maintain these efforts in the file for safe harbor reporting. Publicly open all bids. Choose the lowest responsible bidder. Award within 30 days or reject all bids and re-advertise. You must receive DCEO approval if there is only one bidder and retain a copy of the approval letter in the file. If there is only one bidder, the request to DCEO must include a copy of all interested bidders that picked up or requested bid packets. So there may be only one bidder, but there cannot be only one interested party according to 2 CFR 200. So if you had only one person pick up a bid packet, you must re-advertise your project. Eligibility must be verified prior to the contract award. Retain documentation in the file and include it with the notice of contract award, which will be covered. The grantee issues the notice of award to the contractor. This is not the date used for the NOCA, Notice of Contract Award HUD 2516, or the Notice of Contract Award to DLL. The contractor signs the notice of award and all certifications, and then the contract agreement is executed. The contract agreement date is the date used for the NOCA HUD 2516 and the issuance of the notice of award to DOL. Hold the pre-construction conference. The notice to proceed is issued after all contract documents are executed and the contractor certifies understanding of duties and responsibilities. one copy of the fully executed contract document, including all certifications bearing original signatures, must be retained by the grant administrator in the CDBG grant file. Your bid packets must include your advertisement for bid, instruction for bidders, which describes the method for bidding to be utilized, how the grantee will evaluate bid prices, and the basis and method for subsequently awarding a construction contract, the certificate of owner's attorney, general contract conditions, supplemental general conditions, any specific local regulatory requirements, supplemental general conditions to include any specific state or federal regulatory requirements, including HUD Form 4010 and prevailing wage rate decisions. There can be no substitutions for the federal prevailing wage rate decision and the federal labor standards section. Technical plan and specifications. Such information must be provided by an architect or engineer licensed by the state of Illinois. Any plans provided as part of the bid document must be stamped by a registered architect or engineer. A bid proposal form using the lump sum bidding technique or unit price bidding approach. The contract agreement, which provides a statement of the work to be performed by the contractor, specifies the exact level of compensation agreed upon, and lists all other contract documents. A bid bond form, the performance bond form, which is 100% of the contract price, the payment bond form for 100% of the contract price. Section 3 contractor's requirements, the intent to comply with Section 3, and the contractor subcontractor certification forms, including the EEO, Section 3, labor standards, and non-collusion affidavit. Please see the bid and contract documents on the DCEO website. That address is listed on your screen. The respondent's bid must include the bid price in format requested, whether it is lump sum or unit price, the contractor's bid guarantee, the certification of bidder regarding equal employment opportunity, the intent to comply with Section 3, the certification of bidder regarding Section 3 in segregated facilities, non-collusion affidavit of prime bidder, and the statement of bidder qualifications. A non-responsive bidder is one which fails to submit all of the required documentation with the bid, or one who fails to sign and submit all of the appropriate certifications, the non-collusion affidavit, and/or the bid bond requirements. One who fails to document that the individual or organization is experienced in the kind of project construction required, or a contractor who is listed on the list of parties excluded from federal procurement or non-procurement programs. Please note, if a contractor fails to complete requirements for the grantee to issue a notice to proceed within 45 days of the contract award, the grantee may determine that the bidder has become a non-responsive bidder. Submission of the Notice of Contract Awards. The Notice of Contract Award must be submitted within 10 days of the contract award. The contract award is the date the contract is executed. You must submit the DOL, Notice of Contract Award, to the U.S. Department of Labor. The website or email address is listed on the form. The DCEO Notice of Contract Award must be submitted to the grant manager and to the DCEO Labor Standards Officer. The DCEO Notice of Contract Award, HUD 2516, must include a copy of the contractor eligibility from sam.gov and a completed certified copy of the contractor profile form and a copy of the bid tabulation. Grant funds for construction will not be released until a copy of the NOCA HUD 2516 with all supporting documentation is submitted to DCEO and approved. Prime contracts for CDBG construction projects shall include the following documents and certifications: the notice of award, the contract agreement, certificate of owner's attorney, the notice to proceed, contractor section 3 plan, contractor certificate regarding labor standards, the bidder certification regarding EEO compliance, bidder certification regarding section 3 and segregated facilities, insurance certificates, bid bond or bid guarantee, the contractor's payment bond, the contractor's performance bond, the non-collusion affidavits, labor standards provision, this must be HUD 4010, and the lock-in prevailing wage rates. All subcontracts for CDBG construction projects shall include the following documents and certifications: the locked-in wage rate determination, the labor standards provision, again, this must be HUD 4010, subcontractor section 3 certifications, including subcontractor and project workforce breakdowns, the subcontractor certification regarding labor standards, proposed subcontractor certification regarding section 3 and segregated facilities, the proposed subcontractor certification regarding EEO compliance, and the non-collusion affidavit of the subcontractor. On your screen is the new contractor profile form. It is a 2-page document that must be completed. Grant administrators should sit down with the contractor who has been awarded the CDBG construction project and complete this form. Each section to be completed must be discussed with the contractor to ensure that the contractor understands his responsibilities. Okay, hopefully you were able to download the contractor profile form. And again, the grant administrator shall complete the contractor profile form with the prime contractor. All areas must be completed. Persons authorized to sign payroll reports. This will take place of the separate form that had to be completed. Please have the contractor include any person whom is authorized to sign the payroll reports. In the event that one person is unable to do so, there is a backup. You will use this form to verify information when reviewing your payrolls. The wage rate determination, a copy must be given to the contractor. The work classifications from the wage rate determination must be written into the chart with the appropriate wage to be paid. You must identify the classifications to work on the project that are not included in the wage rate determination. This is the precursor to let the contractor know that a conformance must be requested. The fringe benefit payment information. The contractor must also certify receipt of the wage rate determination, the Davis-Bacon Labor Standards Contractor's Guide and Addendum, or Making Davis-Bacon Work, the Section 3 plan and reporting forms, the payroll form, and the Federal Labor Standards Provision, HUD 4010. The contractor profile form replaces the need for the certification from contractor appointing officer or employees to service payment of employees. So again, if they list multiple persons who are authorized to sign the payroll, you won't have to get a new form signed if there is a change in the person authorized to sign the payrolls. And this also replaces the need for the contractor fringe benefit statement. Just make sure that that fringe benefit portion of this form is completed in its entirety. Okay, with having the contractor profile form, we were able to revise the pre-construction conference checklist so that it is no longer 6 or 7 pages. It is now 4 pages. Hopefully you had an opportunity to download this form, and we'll go into further detail. You must use the version dated December 2022 for projects that were awarded after December 2022. You must discuss and address each item. It is the grant administrators or grantees assigned labor standards officer the responsibility to ensure that the contractor comply with labor standards and Section 3 requirements so that they do not jeopardize the grantee's funding. For item 1, all materials should be secured by the labor standards officer and provided to the prime contractor. The prime contractor should acknowledge his responsibility in providing documents to subcontractor. You will notice that these documents and the certification are listed on both the contractor profile form and the pre-construction document. This is repeated to ensure that the contractor understands the importance of these documents and compliance with CDBG regulations. Items 2 through 9. The general contractor and his or her subcontractors should be thoroughly instructed as to their specific duties and responsibilities for adhering to the federal labor standards and express an understanding of the requirements presented. You need to discuss the need for additional classifications using the performance process, job site postings, and make sure they have the posters, payrolls, submission of payrolls, the employee interviews, any changes, what happens with violations, the equal employment opportunity, and Section 3 workers and Section 3 business concerns. Do not just hand them the pre-construction conference checklist and tell them to sign it. You must give them the materials and discuss each item for compliance. Item 10 is the additional contract requirements, and item 11 is the contractor and grantee representative certifications. This must be signed to indicate that the contractor understands and that the grantee's assigned labor standards officer has done his or her due diligence in explaining all required items to the contractor. And please note that the pre-construction conference checklist must be used in your pre-construction conferences. No other forms are allowed. The last page of the pre-construction conference checklist is actually the sign-in sheet. This sign-in sheet, which is part of the pre-construction conference checklist, must be used. No other forms will be allowed. The sign-in sheet was moved to the back of the document. Okay, the notice to proceed. If all contract documents are in order and executed, the notice to proceed may be issued at the conclusion of the pre-construction conference. It must clearly establish the construction start date, the scheduled project completion date, and the basis for assessing liquidated damages in the event of unsatisfactory performance by the general and subcontractors. Okay, construction management checklist. This is where we are going to walk you through maintaining the construction contract files for your CDBG grant documents. The sections are the checklist itself, the bid specifications and contract documents, the contract, payrolls, and Section 3 reporting. Hopefully you were able to download and have a copy of the CDBG Construction Management Checklist with you. Part 1, Checklist. Prepare the contract file and start the checklist at bid advertising. The checklist must be completed and files must contain all documents. Indicate the date the last entry of the checklist is made, and this is for closeout processing. Section 2 of the CDBG Construction Management Checklist is for the bid specifications and documents. It must include the advertisement for bid and the publisher's certification, the initial wage rate determination or decision that was requested at bid advertisement, the MBE notice and posting verification by the grantee, the MBE notice sent to the local P-TAC Center and Daryl Thomas at DCEO, a copy of the MBE notice and posting verification sent to your grant manager, the bond documentation, the non-collusion affidavit, the statement of compliance, the statement of bidder qualification, the record of who picked up bids, otherwise known as the bid list, the received bids with all certification forms, the bid tabulation. You must submit a copy of the bid tabulation to DCEO with the NOCA or HUD 2516 that was previously mentioned in this presentation. The approval letter from DCEO if you had only one bidder. All Section 3 contractors requirements, and the intent to comply with Section 3, which also must be submitted to DCEO. Section 3 is the contract. You must include a copy of the contractor's eligibility from sam.gov. You must have a copy of the lock-in wage rate determination, whether that was for the bid opening, the contract award, which is the date that the contract was executed, or the start of construction, which is the date of the first payroll when the project is not started within 90 days of the contract award. Please keep these dates in mind. For mixed source funding, effective January 2023, the Illinois prevailing wage is allowed for mixed source projects if the Illinois wage rate determination is higher than the federal wage rate determination. For these projects, your files must contain the approved state source funding documents and the alternate wage rate determination. So if you are using the Illinois wage rate determination in your contract, you must have a copy of the federal wage rate determination to prove that the Illinois wage rate determination is in fact higher. The wage rate determinations must still be processed and tracked by DCEO staff. Illinois wage rates do not lock in as the federal prevailing wage rates do, and they must be updated quarterly, disseminated if updates occur, and maintained in your files throughout the duration of the grant-funded project. If you have an Illinois wage rate determination, you must include the county and the date on your tracking form and make sure that each update is maintained in your file. Submit the notice of the contract award or the NOCA HUD 2516 form both to DOL and actually DOL is a different form, but submit that form to DOL and submit the HUD 2516 form to DCEO, to your grant manager, and ceo.lso@illinois.gov. HUD 2516 must include copies of the contractor eligibility verification, the contractor profile form, and the bid tabulation. Your signed contract, including all required certifications, and a copy of all subcontracts to verify proper obligation must include the locked-in wage rate determination, the labor standards provisions, HUD 4010, and all required certifications. Now remember, if you have the Illinois prevailing wage rate, you would have, in this case, the highest lock-in wage rate determination. You are still required to have the labor standards provision, HUD 4010, and all required certifications. The contractor profile form. This form should be maintained with your payroll documents. The completed signed contractor form. The contractor must acknowledge receipt of documents including the lock-in wage rate determination for the project, the labor standards provision, HUD 4010, the Davis-Bacon Contractor's Guide and Addendum, the Section 3 plan and reporting forms, and the payroll forms. A copy of the contractor profile form must be sent to DCEO with the HUD 2516. The pre-construction conference is held. The pre-construction minutes must be completed and certified. Submit a copy to your grant manager and the labor standards officer. List of contractors with all employee information, social security number, address, and phone number. This is required. Keep this in the file in case wage restitution is needed. This is confidential. Your lock-in wage rate decision and employee rights notice must be posted at the job site. Take photos for verification. Keep them in your project files. Section 4 of the CDBG Construction Management Checklist is payrolls. You must keep weekly payroll documentation. Submit a copy of the first payroll to DCEO with all documentation. I have asked for the submission of weekly payroll for several years now, and I consistently get a copy of the WH-347 with no documentation, no fringe benefit information, no overtime computations, nothing, only the payroll. I cannot verify your work or contractor's payments to his employee if I don't have all of the required documentation. So submit a copy of the first payroll to DCEO with all documentation and maintain that documentation in your files. The payrolls must be numbered sequentially and marked as initial and final. Job classifications must match the classifications on the lock-in wage rate determination. If there is a class or group indicated on the wage rate determination, then that class or group must also be indicated on the payroll documentation. Additional classification requests must be included in the contract files and requested from the Labor Standards Officer. All documentation must be kept in your project file. The U.S. Department of Labor's approval or conformance letter for additional classification must be posted at the work site and sent to the contractor and kept in your construction project files. Confirm the notation of fringe benefits A or B on your contractor's profile form. The use of apprentices requires supporting documentation and a valid and current bargaining agreement and the approved ratio for apprentice to journeyman. These documents must be included in your grant files. A copy of the apprenticeship certification from the Bureau of Apprenticeship and Training from the U.S. Department of Labor must be included in your contract documents or your contract document files. And these documents should be submitted with the first payroll when an apprentice is used. The copy of the apprentice program agreement or union contract annotating the approved apprentice to journeyman ratio must be included in the file. The classifications of work more than 40 hours. If yes, you must confirm the overtime rate. Payroll deductions must be verified. If child support, garnishment, etc., the supporting documentation must be maintained in the file. If other fringe benefit column is used, it must be defined and supporting documentation provided. Payrolls must be signed by an authorized signatory. Verify this information against the contractor profile form. If you have a 1099 independent contractor, please call the DCEO Labor Standards Officer if you are unsure how to handle this on your payroll documents. Employee interview should be conducted in the HUD 11 form completed for an employee from each trade. You should compare the HUD 11 forms to the payrolls for discrepancies and sign and date the bottom after review. If restitution is needed, you should receive the restitution payrolls and proof of payment. All of these documents must be kept in your file. Restitution documentation includes correspondence, affected payrolls, and proof of payments. Copy of this documentation must be submitted to DCEO's Labor Standards Officer. If there is an investigation, HUD 4731 form must be obtained by affected workers. A copy of the last payroll submitted to DCEO with all documentation must be submitted. Again, if I need to review your payrolls, I must have all documentation that you used to review the payrolls. Section 5 is for Section 3 reporting. It must include contractor self-certification forms, the Section 3 worker self-certification forms, and these forms are used if applicable. The required Section 3 contractors report. This form must be submitted with the weekly payrolls and tracked cumulatively by the grant administrator. This is discussed in Section 2 of the compliance presentations for Section 3 requirements. The Safe Harbor compliance form for the grantee, which must include all documentation to support the efforts made, and the Safe Harbor compliance form for the contractor, which also must include all documentation to support the efforts made. Required Section 3 contractors report and Safe Harbor compliance reports must be submitted to DCEO at the closeout of the grant. The last form to be discussed is the Project Process Guide. Hopefully you had an opportunity to download this document from DCEO's website. This form captures each step in the grant administration process, from the Notice of State Award Finalist, which is your NOSAF, to the closeout of your DCEO CDBG grant-funded project. We highly recommend that you use this form. It is a very helpful tool in the grant administration for your CDBG grant-funded project. If you have any questions about your CDBG grant-funded project, you can contact your CDBG grant manager, or if you have any questions about construction management, labor standards, or Section 3 specifically, you may contact me, JoLaine Miner, Labor Standards Officer, Section 3 Coordinator, and the Program Compliance Manager. This concludes Part 3 of the Compliance Presentations, Construction Management. Thank you for your participation.